Hi, Mystery Recaps here. Today, I'm going to explain a comedy fantasy movie called Being John Malkovich. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie begins as we meet our protagonist, Craig Schwartz, a talented puppeteer. Despite his ambitions, he has not had much success at work and is struggling to make a living. Craig is married to a woman named Lotta, but they appear to be far from happy. She is obsessed with animals and has filled their home with several creatures, such as a bird, chimp, dog, and a cat. Lotta dislikes that her husband spends the majority of his time on a hobby and often advises him to seek a more stable job. One morning, Craig comes across a newspaper ad for a file clerk position at a company called Lester Corp. Upon his arrival, he discovers that the company is located on the 7th and a half floor, where the ceiling is very low. This requires employees to bend down while walking, leading to a very uncomfortable situation. Craig then meets the company's CEO, Dr. Lester, who appears to be a warm and friendly old man. After a brief conversation, Lester easily offers him the job and directs him to the orientation room. Next, Craig enters the room and begins watching an orientation video. In the video, it's explained that the building was built in the 1880s by a man named Merton Flemmer, whose wife was a dwarf. She often felt insecure and overlooked, so Merton built this place to make her feel appreciated. After finishing the video, Craig looks around and notices an attractive woman sitting in a chair. He tries to start a conversation with her, but she appears uninterested and ignores him. The next day at the office, Craig approaches the attractive woman again and tries to flirt with her. He states that he doesn't know her name or the department she works in. Craig then suggests playing a game where he'll guess her name, and if he's correct, she'll have to go out with him. The woman readily agrees, as she knows he's never going to get it correct, but after some thinking, he says Maxine, which leaves her speechless. In the evening, we see the two of them having drinks at a bar. Craig seems very nervous and struggles to talk confidently with her. This makes Maxine assume that he's gay, but Craig clarifies that he's not. He also admits that he wants to make love to her. The two then begin to open up about each other, and Craig reveals that he's a puppeteer. Unfortunately, Maxine is repulsed by this, and she immediately ends their date. I don't care if you're married, but if you play with puppets, you may as well be gay. Feeling disappointed, Craig heads home and apologizes to his wife for being late. He later goes to his workshop and begins creating puppets of Maxine and himself. He then makes the two puppets engage in a romantic conversation that ends with a kiss. Whoa. The next day at the office, Craig once again approaches Maxine and confesses that he has fallen in love with her. He tells her that he has never felt such a connection with anyone, not even his wife. However, she coldly rejects him, stating that she isn't interested in puppeteers. This breaks the poor guy's heart, so he returns to his office and begins sorting his files. During this, a document falls on the floor, and he has to lift a cupboard to retrieve it. Craig then accidentally discovers a mysterious tunnel right behind the cupboard. He enters it without thinking, and the door soon shuts behind him with a loud bang. Craig tries to decipher what's going on, but he's suddenly pulled inside by a mysterious force. In the next scene, he begins to see the world through someone else's eyes. The person walks around a house and then stops in front of a mirror. Craig is shocked to see that he is a famous actor, John Malkovich. John then exits the house and gets into an Uber. Even the driver recognizes him and praises his work. Craig is astounded to see life through the eyes of such a superstar, but after 15 minutes, he suddenly finds himself in a ditch next to the city freeway. Amazed by this experience, Craig returns to the office and tries to explain what he saw to Maxine. He tells her how he entered the mind of John Malkovich and saw the world through his eyes. However, she ignores him, thinking he's just making excuses to talk to her. That evening, while Craig is at home, he receives a call from Maxine. She has been thinking about what he said and hopes to turn it into a profitable business. Craig is initially hesitant, as he doesn't want to exploit the strange phenomenon, but after some insistence, he agrees. Next, Craig and Lotta head to Lester's house for dinner, during which he shares the secret of the portal with her. Lotta is intrigued by the bizarre event and says she wants to try it as well. Craig agrees and takes her to his office, where she enters the same tunnel. Moments later, Lotta suddenly finds herself inside the mind of John Malkovich. She is ecstatic about the experience, but after 15 minutes, she is abruptly back in the ditch, where Craig is waiting. An excited Lotta wants to experience it again, but Craig refuses, reminding her that they'll be late for their dinner. The couple soon arrives at Lester's house, where the old man warmly greets them. While having dinner, Lotta excuses herself to go to the restroom, but has trouble finding it. Instead, she stumbles upon a room filled with pictures of John Malkovich. Lotta is stunned by this, and later shares it with Craig on their way home. They're unsure of the relationship between Dr. Lester and John, but suspect that the old man must be aware of the portal. The following day at the office, Craig is with Maxine discussing the idea of placing an ad in the newspaper about their business. This is when Lotta unexpectedly shows up, surprising them both. Craig is certainly annoyed by his wife's sudden arrival, but he has no choice but to introduce the two women. Shortly after, Lotta says that her experience last night was surreal, and she believes she is transsexual. Craig becomes furious upon hearing this and calls her ridiculous. They almost get into an argument, but Maxine intervenes and requests Craig to let his wife enter the portal again. Later, Maxine manages to get John's personal number and gives him a call. She claims to be a huge fan and requests a meeting that evening. John is used to such calls and proceeds to hang up, but she hurriedly tells him the time and the name of the restaurant. After the call ends, John thinks for a while and eventually decides to meet this new woman. Meanwhile, Lotta, who is currently inside John's mind, also finds out about the plan. She then asks Craig to take her to the portal at 8 p.m., but doesn't explain why. In the evening, we see Maxine and John on their date, and he appears mesmerized by her beauty. Lotta, who is inside his head, also finds Maxine very attractive and begins to fall in love with her. The latter quickly picks up on this, but doesn't seem to mind. After about 15 minutes, Lotta is ejected back into the ditch, and she drives home with her husband. The next day, Craig and Maxine find their first customer, an insecure, overweight man. He eagerly pays $200 just for the chance to experience what it's like to be John Malkovich for a moment. The scene then cuts to the evening, where Maxine is having dinner with the couple at their place. Later, they all sit down for a weed session, during which Craig and Lotta suddenly kiss Maxine, but she quickly pushes them away and makes it clear that she isn't interested in Craig. She also tells Lotta that she is smitten by her, but only while she is inside John's head. After this, Maxine leaves the house while the couple stares at each other awkwardly, trying to figure out how to turn this into some sort of four-person three-way. Over the following days, Maxine starts a relationship with John, but she only makes love to him when Lotta is inside his mind. During their intimate moments, she even calls him by the name Lotta. John finds this strange, but he chooses to ignore it because he doesn't want to pass up the chance to be with such an attractive woman. Meanwhile, Craig begins to feel increasingly depressed as he realizes that both women in his life have abandoned him for each other. He still has his puppets, though. One evening, when Lotta returns home, Craig accuses her of betraying him and ties her up. He then forces her to call Maxine and arrange a meeting through John's body. The terrified woman complies, but instead of releasing her, Craig locks her in a cage along with her chimpanzee. He then goes through the portal and, using John's body, finally makes love to Maxine. However, Craig becomes overly excited and keeps telling John to touch her breasts. This freaks out the superstar, and he realizes that someone is speaking through his body. Later, Craig returns home and excitedly brags to his wife about how he made love to Maxine. Elsewhere, John meets with his friend and confides that something disturbing is happening to him. He explains that he feels like someone else is controlling his body, and it all started when he met Maxine. His friend just laughs it off, suggesting that he might have been stoned, but John suspects that Maxine is a witch who has supernatural powers. One evening, he arrives at her office and finds a long line of people. They claim to be waiting for the opportunity to enter John Malkovich's mind. This freaks him out, and he tries to cut the line to enter the portal first. The others try to stop him, but they soon learn that it's John Malkovich himself. Shortly after, he confronts Maxine and accuses her of toying with his life. He then insists on going through the portal to see what happens. Craig is very reluctant and warns that it's dangerous, but Maxine asks him to let John go. Following this, John enters the portal and finds himself in a surreal restaurant world where everyone looks like him. Even more bizarre is that no one speaks anything except the word Malkovich. This freaks John out, and he soon finds himself back in the ditch where Craig is waiting for him. He demands that Craig close the portal forever, as he can't take it anymore. However, the latter refuses, claiming that the portal is his source of income, which he can't afford to lose. John threatens to sue him, but Craig doesn't care because he knows how to control the man. Elsewhere, Lotta is still in the cage, but her beloved chimpanzee senses her suffering and cleverly releases her ties eyes. The woman is overjoyed and hugs the chimp in tears. After this, she immediately calls Maxine and reveals how Craig has been holding her hostage. She also discloses that it was Craig, not her, who has been making love to her over the past few days. Surprisingly, instead of being upset, Maxine is impressed by how smoothly Craig manipulated John. Her words break Lotta's heart because she thought Maxine loved her. Maxine admits that she does love her, but is very confused at the moment. After this, she goes to meet John, who tries to shut her out. However, Craig soon takes over the superstar's body and they begin to make love. This movie's fucked. He demonstrates to Maxine how to control John by manipulating his body like a puppeteer does. Told ya puppets were hot, he says. John reveals that he has finally regained complete control of John and is no longer ejected after 15 minutes. The two then discuss that Craig should permanently stay inside John and use his money for their lavish lifestyle. Elsewhere, a distraught Lotta goes to see Lester and explains the whole situation to him. The old man doesn't seem surprised and reveals that he is well aware of the portal. It turns out his real name is Merton Flemmer, the one who built the office building. He reveals that he has been using the portal for many years to attain eternal life by inhabiting the bodies of guests such as John. Along with a group of older people, he has been planning to permanently take over John's body on his 44th birthday. He warns Lotta not to use the portal in the future because it will no longer lead to John but to a completely different consciousness in which they will be trapped forever as powerless observers. He then leads Lotta to a room where he introduces her to his old friends. The scene cuts to 8 months later now, where Craig is still inside John's mind and married to Maxine, who is now pregnant. It turns out that over the past few months, Craig has successfully transitioned John's career from actor to puppeteer, gaining a lot of fame. However, it seems that Maxine is not as happy as she used to be and misses Lotta a lot. One evening, Craig returns home from a puppet show where he was honored for his upcoming 44th birthday, but he becomes worried when he learns that his beloved wife is missing. Soon after, he receives a call from Dr. Lester, who demands that he leave John's body or they will kill his wife. This puts Craig in a dire situation, as without John, he would be back to his miserable life. The scene then shifts to Maxine, who is currently being held captive by Lester and Lotta. The old man reveals that Craig hung up on him, and this enrages Lotta even more. She decides that if she can't have Maxine, no one can, and begins to attack her. To save herself, Maxine enters the portal, with Lotta following her with a gun. They then travel through John's subconscious memories, from childhood to adolescence and adulthood. After some time, they finally return to the ditch, where Lotta continues her onslaught, but before she can shoot, Maxine reveals that Lotta is actually the parent of her child. She explains that the baby was conceived while they made love through John, and that's the only reason she decided to keep it. This makes Lotta emotional, and the two women embrace and express their love. On the other hand, Lester continues to pressure Craig, who eventually decides to leave John's body to save his wife. He soon arrives at the ditch, where he notices the two women hugging each other. Craig tells Maxine that he has left John's body to save her, but she doesn't seem to care. The women then abandon him and quickly leave in a car. Elsewhere, we see Lester and his friends heading to the portal, preparing to permanently take over John's body. The scene shifts to 7 years later, where Maxine and Lotta are married and enjoying life with their daughter Emily. However, a shocking twist is revealed. Craig is actually trapped within Emily's mind. It turns out that he returned to the portal that night, but it was too late and he ended up getting trapped. Now, he is unable to do anything except watch his ex-wife